Hello and welcome to video 2 of our rock and roll project. Now, up until now, you have managed to practice some independent skills. We're now going to look how to put those together. So, you know that you can play a shuffle rhythm, you can play some syncopation, you know the chords G, C and D on the piano and hopefully on the guitar as well. All of these can fit together to start to create a bigger picture. Now, I need to introduce you to a tool called a metronome. Now, a metronome can tick at a set speed to keep us in time. For the whole of this demonstration, I'll be using this metronome. You'll hear it ticking in the background. This is so that I play in time. I've set this metronome to 120 beats per minute. So a useful thing to start with is to try and lay down a pulse. Now you should try and bring out the syncopation in this rhythm. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that just matches what the metronome is doing. Okay, we'll just try that again. Okay, so now we could choose to vary this rhythm, maybe by playing a shuffle every now and again, perhaps like this. Now, you might be getting a little bit bored with the sound of the cowbell. Let's try something else. As well as the guitar, another instrument often plays the offbeat syncopation, the humble tambourine. So make sure you count yourself in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Now for the chords, it's very important that you're not only in time, but you also play the chords for the right number of beats. What we're going to try here is playing the G chord for 4 bars. We're going to use the C chord for 2 bars, and then back to the G chord for 2 bars. We'll have 1 bar of the D chord, 1 bar of the C chord, followed by 2 bars of our G chord. Okay, so the metronome is ticking again. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, you don't have to play them with held notes. You can be a bit more interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe something like this with the right hand. Now that's just one example of some rhythms that you could play. So, are you ready to learn something new? I thought you'd say that. Now, as well as having some of the features that we've already talked about, such as a shuffle rhythm, syncopation, a 3-chord trick, remember those magic chords, those G, C and D? Rock and roll music uses 2 very important and distinctive characteristics. The chord sequence is always in a 12-bar pattern. Very interesting, because you've heard of the 12-bar blues, I'm sure. Rock and roll music uses this 12-bar pattern. As I explained with the piano, we use a set sequence. 4 G chords, so that's for 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Then we have 2 bars of the C chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. 2 bars back to the G chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And then we have the fastest moving bit. We have the D chord for 1 bar, G chord for 1 bar. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. The D chord for 1 bar, the C chord for 1 bar, then the G chord. Now, along with this 12-bar chord pattern, there is something known as a walking bass. If you think about what walking actually means, the kind of tread as we step along, you might start to recall a bass pattern that you've heard that sounds like the piano player, or rather the bass player in the rock and roll band, is walking up and down the notes. Have a listen to this. Now, we can create that walking bass sound either by playing the bass guitar or the upright bass. But if you don't play those instruments yet, we can substitute by using the piano. Let's go and take another look at what you can use the piano for and how to create this walking bass. You know the chords. They are, of course, G, C and D. The walking bass follows the same pattern, and the pattern of those chords is very important. Remember, a 12-bar pattern. The first section of the walking bass starts on the G chord, as you would expect. And the notes are G, B, D, E, F. And it walks up and down. Have a listen. There's our first 4 bars played. Which chord do we move to next? That's right, the C chord. And we can go up, or we can go down. Now, something sounded wrong, didn't it? We need to make sure that we use the B flat in this walking bass line. The B flat is a blue note, which means it gives it that little bit of tension. Have a listen. Did you like that B flat? Well, let's see the G chord pattern into the C chord pattern. And remember, we only need to hear this one once, because it lasts for how many bars? 2, that's right. Then where do we go? We go back to the G chord. So, from the beginning, it sounds like this. And then we're waiting for the D chord, aren't we? Did you see that quick movement? I had to play the D chord and straight to the C chord before returning to our G. Now, let's try playing that in time. This metronome is playing in crotchets. We need to play the bass line in quavers. Pretty quick, eh? Now, if you're getting a bit stuck with this really difficult and really quick walking bass line, there is an alternative. As long as you remember the chords, you can play an alternative. Have a listen. So here's our crotchets. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which, if you noticed, is exactly the same pattern, exactly the same notes as your 3 triads, which you'll play. And they just match the triad, and you play them at the same time. Have a go. So, me and Mr. White just created a rock and roll band through using some of the elements of rock and roll music. Syncopation. I'm waiting for it. That's right. Shuffle rhythm. 12 chord pattern. 12 bar blues as it's known. The 3 chord trick using G, C and D chord. And a trusty little friend called a metronome to make sure that every element was in time. Now your challenge is to make a band in groups that has people who can play each of those parts. Which one are you going to offer?